Welcome back, you hear of Goldberg. Today I'm announcing the release of Why Conservatism Failed and How to Save It. This is a text which has been a long time in the making. I think I started writing maybe in November or December of 21. The reason for the delayed timeline is that in the first instance, I tried a different writing strategy and that backfired. But perhaps more importantly, when you're dealing with a subject matter like conservatism, there's so many nuances, regional alliances, variations based upon country and time period, that it's attuned to dumping a bunch of lard on a defeathered terror bird and just trying to chase them around, grabbing hold. Very brutal. So, in that spirit, I had to cut something of a narrow swath and say it's going to be primarily focused on the second new right, as in Ronald Reagan going forward, not to the exclusion of stuff beforehand, because it's important for context, but we have to have some idea of where the book's going to go. Otherwise, you're going to gallivant endlessly down the fields of theory. It'll be very boring and have no purpose. And not just that, but focusing on those who have actually held power, particularly at the federal level, because we can say, well, it wouldn't be great to have propertarianism or libertarianism. That's great, but if you're not ever getting elected, you're not changing anything. So it's truly about how do you find answers and what's been put in place, what they've done or not done, as opposed to these vague aspirational notions. I do want to make a quick advisory. If you're a limited government libertarian, you like tapping the Randian booty, you're one of those private sector bra, oh yeah, baby. You're a fan of Kondachi Owens or Victor Davis Hanson, Benny Boy Shapiro, Dinesh D'Souza, Liberals are the Real Racists. This is probably not a good book for you. You might want to skip it because it's bound to greatly offend and trigger you. On account of the fact that I did not cuck out on the important issues, negative influences on our foreign policy, the social matters such as the retreat on gay marriage and the LGBT agenda. Now, I don't care if someone's gay, they want to do their own thing, responsibly, hopefully, but you can't call yourself a conservative and then throw out the society and the family and just go, oh, tax cuts and deregulation, because at that point you're just a libertarian or a conservative Democrat. There's no reason to make this big distinction, oh, I'm set apart, if you're essentially fighting for economic freedom or simping for corporations, depending on the label you prefer. So we talk about that. We discuss the actual view of conservatives towards civil rights, which has been misrepresented by people in the modern age. We go into stuff like immigration and how that can be addressed. Now, some people will say, what about gun rights? That should be a big part. Yeah, they've had some victories on gun rights, but it's been overblown because you still have the National Firearms Act on the books, which if you're a Second Amendment purist, that's a massive problem. You also have a lot of states that still enforce these laws. And more importantly, the proponents of gun rights have said, well, if you have these rights, they can't take away your freedoms. That's nonsense. We've seen it everywhere. So just because you had those guns does not mean the state is shrinking, does not mean that surveillance, or just doesn't mean that the invasion is stopped, or they haven't taken over institutions and promoted all this nonsense, the woke stuff. So you have to acknowledge that and recognize that it goes deeper, and that's what I was trying to get into. Of course, a book like this cannot just be taking a bunch of grass and tossing it in the wind. Another, oh, if we only had term limits and a balanced budget amendment. There's plenty of those texts available. Check out Mark Levin's The Liberty Amendments. Not a bad book, but not an answer, because you don't have 67 Rand Pauls in the Senate. You don't have an equal number of like-minded people in the House. So you need another option, a different route. In point, I outline what can be done specifically through control of the presidency, and there's basis for this going back to Thomas Jefferson, and also what federal laws can be invoked on stuff like immigration and other matters, because that's going to be crucial. Trump actually did some good stuff, but it mainly came out in terms of administrative reform, the bureaucracy in 2020, by which time you had like a couple of months left before things could truly be put in motion. So it's not just a question of having power, but also understanding what to do with it. And like I said, if you want more of the idealistic path like you get from Mark Levin, a couple of years ago I wrote this book. It still has good content in it, nice history of American politics as well. But our political system, the media, it rewards demagoguery. It rewards no action on major issues. And that's why people have little motivation to vote and restrict their time in office or say, oh, I just want to compromise and let's get something done. Therefore, I think this is more viable to staunch the bleeding and allow us to get back to a point where maybe those amendments or reforms they always talk about become more of a reality. But I really wanted this to be a pragmatic book, something that if you are in politics, you're going into it, you might be able to kind of nudge someone in the proper direction and help them. Once again, as always, if you are short on change, you can purchase the ebook. You have 7 days to read it. It's not a terribly long text, and you can return it, get a refund. It doesn't bother me. It's really about the information getting out there. Now, if you happen to really like the book or you like the channel, I think they added, someone pointed out to me in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little heart with a shekel symbol. If you so choose, you can, but otherwise, there's the book. As far as other updates are concerned, I'm currently working on the Care Bear and the Germany book concurrently because there is a decent amount of overlap. And as I come across certain little tidbits, like there was a history of Ukraine, they had some good insight into the agricultural policy of the Germans when they invaded. That might be added to SOR, other stuff to the Italy book. I always try to see if there's more that's relevant, it can go in there. Just takes a little bit of messing around with the paperback documents and the Kindle files. But that will all progress. Hopefully by the end of this year I can have those two completed, or at least mostly completed. I'll also be going back and adding from 3 sources. One, Wildhood, because I don't think I included a study on the flies in the original copy. I have to double check. That was a big black pill about how even some insects, how they mate. And then on top of that, there's the book Sentient, which has some of the most updated info on pheromones, because a lot of these guys who try to dispute the importance of appearance will appeal to pheromones, but they don't really understand what they're talking about, sadly. Finally, Unnatural Selection had those little references regarding what happens if you have an expansive male population in history, so I'll add those in. It's always about continuous improvement, self-improvement, LOL. So, like I said, if you're interested, you can check out the book or some of the others, and otherwise, just keep watching videos and enjoy.